So if the grace tree is the strategic and calculated side of the rapier, then the blood tree is the exact opposite of that. It is a very aggressive, very fast-paced, high-risk, high-reward play style, and I'm uh, I'm actually very happy that it's finally viable in the game because it's a setup that I've been interested in and something that I've been wanting to run honestly since the beta. I tried out the entire rapier kit when the game came out, but Flourish just didn't have enough damage to make using the tree worth it. You would kind of dance around in fights for a long time, and then when you would actually find an opportunity to land a flourish, it would kind of tickle them. So now that it has a lot more damage, I find even with a single bleed stack, you can oftentimes do enough damage to burst people in certain windows and find an opening to kill them, as you saw in the initial clip there. But yeah, it's pretty fun. As you see in the back here, I'm using a fire staff with it instead of a spear. The main thing about the blood tree is I find with the grace tree you have way more flexibility with what your off weapon is, because the grace tree kind of covers all the bases that you need for a build. It has damage, it has riposte to get you out of a lot of situations, and then flush is a very strong mobility ability. But the blood tree doesn't have mobility or any defense, so that's generally where you have to really think about what your off weapon is going to be. The reason why you see almost every setup that runs the blood tree use a spear is because oftentimes you're getting yourself into melee range with this setup, and the spear is one of the best weapons at keeping you alive in melee distance or melee range because of the fact of its kit. It's a zoning weapon, it has a ton of stuns back to back, and it's something that can halt the enemy's aggression and keep you alive when you kind of overextend yourself. But I wanted to try fire staff with it because not only does it have the mobility to kind of make up for the fact that we're not using flesh anymore, and it's something that'll help me use this setup in open world or OPR, which is what I generally enjoy to play more. But it also has some of the, if not best, damage over time in the game, I think, if you can stack up enough stacks. Some other weapons like bow do more damage over time per single dot, but you can stack multiple stacks of burning. And my thought behind the pairing these two weapons was one, to make up for that mobility that we lost, but to kind of provide damage in that middle area or that neutral part of fights where either my flourish is down or I'm not in range to be able to continue applying Tondo stacks. I found the fire staff does a really good job of not only stacking up and increasing the overall dot pressure that we have, but alone it does enough to constantly keep people under pressure, which is something that's been pretty enjoyable. But back to the blood tree, one of the abilities that I think people haven't been thinking about or really been paying attention to too much, and is one of the most underrated abilities in the game, in my opinion, is actually Tondo. Not only does it apply a bleed that you can stack, but it staggers the opponent. Similar to if you land a light attack on somebody when they're running, and it kind of slows them down for a second, a Tondo applies the exact same effect. And on top of that, the main thing about the ability is it extends the range of your rapier. I think it's about 3 or 4 meters or whatever the range of the ability is, but because of the fact that you can at range land a Tondo and then stagger them, and on top of that you can then animation cancel the ability with evade, you have so much options when it comes to this ability. You've seen already multiple times in the 2 clips that I've been playing here, but you can either evade in after a Tondo to go in for a combo, or evade away from the enemy to try to give yourself space after the stagger. It is a extremely powerful ability, and I'm pretty happy that I'm finally able to use it. And taking a look at the build, we have Deadly Flourish on our rapier. So we want to get the most value out of that, so we put it on our weapon. I have Vicious on there as well. I did try to go for Thwarting Strikes, but I found Vicious to just be better overall, as Vicious buffs the rest of our damage as well, evade and our light attacks, and it's just better overall, I find. I don't even really think that Thwarting Strikes even buffs the damage from the dots when you do Flourish. It's hard to see in the middle of fights, but either way, I enjoy Vicious more. Emberstone's Promise is the fire stat that we're using. As I mentioned, it has that Keenly Jagged. So that, in addition to some of our perks we're going to go over as well, it's how we're able to apply a lot of that ranged pressure. As for our gear, we're still running Sinful Glare. I have Resilient Refreshing Pillar of Fire, Omnidirectional Evade, Keen Tondo, as we don't have Keen on our rapier, Stable Incinerate, and then as for the jewelry, I'm trying out Champion's Amulet, Featherweight Ring, and Champion's Earring. All of this stuff I may change. It's just stuff that I'm throwing on and trying for now, but it does feel pretty good. I'm probably going to make a little bit of tweaks here and there. As for the rapier, obviously we're running most of the things on the blood tree. I'm probably going to go ahead and try to fit Refreshing Strikes on there, because there's a couple of times that I find in combat where I close the distance and then I'm like a second or less than a second off from being able to have my Tondo up. So I think this would definitely prevent a lot of those situations from happening. But yeah, Light Edge is really nice to just give you some DPS outside of your Tondo Flourish combo, and Heavy Puncture as well. And then that for our Grace Tree. As for the Fire Staff, it's similar to the setup that I ran a couple of patches ago, where I was trying to go for that Fortify. We have Pillar, the rest of the perks they would normally take in the Fire Mage tree, Incinerate, Burnout, and then I'm also going for Kindle, just so we can make sure to get that damage to last as long as possible, and let it burn. And taking a look at one of the first fights here, where you're outside of stun, and we're just going to go ahead and retreat with that Burnout, as we got a couple of reinforcements now. And as I mentioned, you can animation cancel that ability incredibly fast, and we apply a Tondo to 2 of those enemies and evade out, and do end up catching ourselves back into a ice shower though, so we just use the grit from Flourish to get ourselves out of that, and just kind of keep moving. I go for Incinerate, guessing that he wouldn't go for the stun on the hammer, and we did guess right, but we do end up getting stunned by the hammer anyways, and we end up taking quite a bit of pressure, so I need to just keep on my feet and reposition here, because they're having us quite low, and the Spirit player does seem to be quite aggressive. We do land a Incinerate though, as he does try to close the distance on us as we are low. I do land a Flourish there, but we don't have any bleed stacks up, so it doesn't do any damage. And again, as soon as that hammer player comes back, we just end up taking so much damage. But on the retreat there, you see we're able to apply a ton of damage over time. We apply a bleed stack, or sorry, 2 and a burn stack from our Pillar of Fire. And pretty much while we're getting attacked by this hammer player, we're still able to have pressure on this player and keep him low. We go for the Flourish there again, but unfortunately we miss. I would have killed him. We do end up landing the follow-up Incinerate though, as he is playing super aggressive on us, and we're able to take him down. And then we are left to the 1v1 with the Great Axe Hammer player here. This player was in a full tank build here, as you see right there. I should definitely have been dead. Thankfully he didn't have damage though, so I was kind of using this time to get familiar with the build and get a little bit more of my combos and stuff like that familiar. But you're not doing a good job at all of avoiding any of these hammer stuns or Great Axe stuns, and we do kind of land a Flourish there to just get ourselves out of that blender that we were in, and we landed another bleed. But again, like I mentioned, we're just taking stun after stun here, and we should just be dead a couple of times. We do land the incinerate though, and a couple of bleed stacks, so we're able to start to build up that damage over time pressure. We land the second incinerate into the shockwave, into the heavy that should have killed us but didn't. We go ahead and proc off a couple of those bleeds, but just slowly picking away at this tank and trying to figure out exactly how far I can take these combos and stuff. I keep going for a lot of incinerates as he leaves himself open, and we almost proc off the bleed there with the flourish to finish off the kill, but he does land the stun right before we hit the second part of that ability, and we're just going to go ahead and burn out away and then slowly just tick away at this tank. But you see, towards the end of that fight there, we just had, I think, I don't know, 2 or 3 bleed stacks and 2 or 3 burn stacks, and it's just so much damage over time pressure, which is something that I really like about the build. One of the things that we were doing too much, I think, in that fight versus the tank was being on our fire staff bar a little bit too much, and we end up getting into a fight against him here pretty much right after, and we're gonna go ahead and pretty much apply those things that we learned from that last fight. The rapier, as I mentioned, the blood tree has a lot of pressure and a lot of damage as long as you commit to it. So we end up back into a fight with him again. The bear finally de-aggroes off of us, and I'm going to go ahead and just stick to my rapier and try to see if I can apply as many bleed stacks as I can. And you see, even with a single bleed stack there, it applies quite a bit of damage. That's something to keep in mind. You saw it earlier, but you can burst somebody and finish them off even with a single bleed stack as long as you find the opening. But we do a really good job of avoiding his stuns this time, and find that opening with 2 bleed stacks, and we take him down a little bit faster than last time. And then we get some assistance here to help attack Star. But yeah, the thing about the fire staff with this setup is it's something that I'm having to get used to for sure, and it has a lot of potential, but it is similar to the blood tree, a high risk high reward kind of setup. If you kind of mess up your burnout or get caught in stuns, you can end up going down fairly quickly because you don't have that parry to kind of bail you out. But because of the fact that we have Keenly Jagged, we can end up applying quite a few damage over time stacks onto people, which opens up even more burst windows for our rapier. As you see, I burn out onto this musket player who jumps onto the point. We land a critical pillar to get both of those bleeds onto him pretty much instantly. Follow up with that Tondo, flourish through the crowd, and we're able to finish him off there. That's the other thing about the blood tree that I've been enjoying quite a bit as well, is you can end up finishing off kills from way further away than you are able to on the Gray Street. The fact that Flourish kind of lunges you forward so far, even if you don't land the first hit of that ability, if you just tick them with the end of that lunge, you can end up bursting people for quite a bit of damage and then following up with a evade into more light attacks. So it's a really fun setup for sure. But I've got one last fight for you here to kind of show this setup. We've got a heavy healer on the enemy team, so it ends up being a really nice match to kind of show the potential of the build. We also have another player on our team as well, who I believe is running a blood rapier with a ice gauntlet. But yeah, starting with the fight here, it ends up being kind of a standoff between me and the sword and shield player. I go in for a poke and kind of just roll out, trying to anticipate that shield stun. We get hit by it anyways, and instead of going for that backstab, he hits us with the shield bash. And right as we kind of both open up, I go in for my Tondo pressure here, and on top of that, he's getting kind of just flamethrowered. So I can feel his pain, and he kind of retreats to get a little bit of breathing room, and the healer ends up running into us. When nobody else kind of on us here, I'm just going to go ahead and take my time to apply our stacks here. We end up getting one stack of Tondo, do a really nice job of avoiding that scream. We had only 2 stacks there, and we were able to do quite a bit of damage there. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can build up 3. I end up getting 2 stacks onto him here, and we're just applying pressure with that evade. He ends up dodging the 3rd, and we end up getting another player onto us, so I'm just trying to see if I can find and opening for that Tondo. We end up getting the third stack there. And again, we just chunk him for a ton of damage, but because of the fact that the second player ended up showing on us there, he was able to heal back to full, and he wasn't low when I went for the flourish. And a friendly player is under a lot of pressure, but we end up going for the evade after the Tondo, land the flourish, and even with one stack of bleed, as I mentioned, we can end up bursting somebody down. We end up blowing up that sword and shield player, and we jump onto the healer. Now with both blood rapiers on this healer, he's not going to be able to stay alive for much longer. And the flamethrower on top of that is just too much pressure. Although he is staying, doing a really good job of staying alive. This is just an insane build. But we are going to end up taking him down here, as I do end up landing the final flourish, and our enemy team ends up taking the second round there. Had I been able to have the healer down just a little bit when I went for that flourish, I think we would have been able to finish him off. But that's what I mean when I meant this build is a really high risk, high reward kind of setup. But jumping into the second round here, I immediately just jump onto the healer. We land a couple of stacks of bleed and burn from our fire staff. Then we go ahead and just jump in for that pressure. He ends up landing a scream onto us, but as the other two enemies are on our teammates, I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can just again go for that healer. As we do end up getting another player onto us, so I just go ahead and see if I can cash out our flourish there, and then I switch my attention over to the blunderbuss player. But I notice my teammates have the healer super low, so I switch my attention to him, and I try to see if we can find an opening here to finish him off. I kind of mess up my my combo there, but all three of us are keeping the pressure out on him quite well. I go for an incinerate to get even more damage over time onto him. We land more damage. I land another huge flourish, but he just manages to potion right before we do it again. This healer just keeps managing to escape death, as me and the other rapier player just keep hitting him with fat flourishes. But he weathers the burst, and we kind of go back to the neutral game here. And I'm trying to see if I can find an opportunity to burst one of the other players here instead of trying to go for the healer. But as the situation kind of brings us here, we find ourselves back onto the healer, and we end up getting chewed up by this blunderbuss. So I'm trying to see if I can just find a little bit of line of sight to regenerate a little bit of health from this blunderbuss player here. And I try to go in for the combo there, but we end up getting blown up by that shrapnel shot. Yeah, when you're specced into the blunderbuss, it just does so much damage, as he ends up taking both me and the other rapier player out. And our teammate does go down as well, so we're down to the final round here. As you can see in chat there, our team definitely has quite a bit of damage, but not only is their team tankier, but they have heals, so it's gonna seems to be a very balanced matchup here. But opening up the fight again, as it's the last round, I'm just trying to be careful and not get bursted by this blunderbuss again. So you see I retreat there instead of going in for a full combo. And as this player jumps onto us, we just kind of go for a flourish to give ourselves some space. And I'm going to try to go for the rapier player this time, as I feel like we can blow him up before he can get a heal off. And I kind of jump in there to get an incinerate to separate our teammates, but as I notice one of our teammates quite low, I go in and try to jump and give him a little bit of assistance and breathing room so that he could heal, and switch my attention back to this rapier player, because again I want to see if I can just burst him. We go for a Tondo into the combo there, and it looks like our teammate missed that evade, or the spike, excuse me. But you see we land a fat flourish as he stays super aggressive onto us. And although we are able to finish him off, our teammate does go down as well. So it's down to a 2v2. I land an incinerate on the healer, and we try to follow up on the pressure as well. I try to go for a flourish, but the healer heals, and we kind of missed the end of our flourish there. But I'm trying to just stay in the rhythm and stay aggressive onto this Sword of Shield player, because again, I know I can burst him. He has a couple of bleed stacks on him. I go for the flourish there, but we get staggered. Instead of retreating, we end up going down. I try to go for the flourish again. I know had I gone for it there, we probably would have finished him, but being that he was on the hatchet, he probably would have gotten to 5 death anyways. So I definitely should have just retreated there. And unfortunately, we do end up going down, but a really fun match for sure. The build as well. The build is something that is really interesting. So I'm excited to put more time into this and try out the other setup that I have in mind. The spear void gauntlet setup is finished as well. I just need to get a couple of more clips for that. But if you guys have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.
The Reds look unstoppable for